Hello and welcome to When They Popped. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Mary.
How's it going, Mare?
It goes. How are you?
I can't believe it's June. I can't believe it's summer. And I can't believe we're like a month away from Backstreet Boys being back at Sphere.
And us being back at the Sphere.
Feels like we never left, if I'm being honest.
Oh my gosh. I am so excited. Listeners, are you going back to the Sphere for this summer run? Let us know. We're obviously probably going to talk about it a lot. Probably too much, because that's just who we are as people.
If someone's going to beat a dead horse.
It's going to be us.
It's going to be us. Well, let's get into the topic of today's episode. We are bringing back the When They Popped book club. In today's episode, we are diving into Hayden Panettiere's memoir. This has been such an interesting one to dive into. I listened to the audiobook. Did you read the paper copy, Mary?
I started the paper copy and then life got so crazy that I switched to the audiobook. So it was kind of a cool 50-50.
I listened to audiobooks on like 1.8x speed because I get so frustrated when they talk so slow. And I know this is not a Hayden thing. They make everyone do it. I'm also listening to Lena Dunham's memoir right now, Famesick. And it's been interesting going back and forth between the two. But this was a great read. This was Mary's suggestion. We're going to get into our ratings at the end of the episode, but we wanted to recap it for you all. Obviously, Hayden goes into so many different stories in this book, but we compiled sort of the biggest revelations, things we didn't know, biggest themes, and some of our favorite moments that shocked the hell out of us.
Yeah, so it's not everything. There's obviously a ton more that she gets into in the book, but these are our highlights or lowlights, if you will. You know, some of what she shares isn't pretty and it's tough.
No,
so,
a tough read. But I gotta say, even just from the very beginning, it starts with this very blunt admission that she does not blame the father of her child or her mom for any of her shortcomings or wrongdoings. We know Hayden has had a really rough go. She struggled with addiction. She lost custody of her daughter. And I thought it was really refreshing that from the beginning, she's like, listen, I don't blame anyone for this. This is just my life as I remember it. And I thought that was a really interesting way just to be like, hey, just so you know, before you like read any further, like we're not villainizing anyone here. This is just my life and what happened and how I remember it. So speaking of her childhood, she shares this really fun fact that she was neighbors with Bill Murray growing up. And she tells this story of this guy on her block that she just moved into. Her dad is a New York City firefighter. He built this beautiful new home in a New York City suburb. And there's this guy that all the neighborhood kids love. And he had like puppies or kittens or something. And they're like, oh, go tell Bill you want to go see his kittens or whatever. And I was like, this sounds like the beginning of a horror story, like a kid getting like abducted. And it turns out it's Bill Murray.
How cool is that?
Like, so cool. So we know her dad is a New York City firefighter and her mom was a Broadway star turned stage mom. And this becomes a huge theme in the beginning chapters of the book, how Hayden gets her start and how influential her mom is in coaching her and helping her get those beginning roles because she is so motivated to help Hayden succeed in this industry.
I loved getting some of the stories about some of her different auditions that she did. She booked like a ton of campaigns like right out of the gate when she was like, I mean, what was she, like 3, 4? Like she was like a little kid. She was undoubtedly such an adorable child. I can just imagine those big blue eyes and blonde hair. But so she was kind of crushing it right out of the gate.
Didn't she share a story where she was auditioning to be in a Kix commercial and she couldn't stop eating the cereal because it tasted so good?
Relatable.
I know. I just thought that was so cute. And that's just like little kids being little kids. Like it's so adorable to think about. But she does share really early memories from that time. And I was trying to think as I was listening, like, what is my earliest memory? Like, how old was I? I was very impressed that she was able to pull on like things from when she was 3, 4 years old. Like, I don't remember shit.
My husband has incredible memory from being a child. And it has shown me how not incredible my memory is because I'm like, you remember that? I don't remember anything.
I remember my mom is always like, of course you remember that. Like, why she gets mad at the things that I remember because they're so specific. It's like, there's no way I made it up. But I feel like that's my memories really started around like 5. So she really discovers, Hayden, that she has this incredible talent when she earns a spot on One Life to Live and she learns how to cry on demand. And I thought this was admirable to understand how a young actor hones a really difficult skill, but it also made me devastated as a human that this little kid is sharing, she's tapping into how she made herself cry. She
Mhm.
said that she was constantly thinking of the worst thing that could ever happen to her, which, that makes sense if you're trying to cry on demand. When you're
Yeah.
a little kid, you should not be thinking of the worst thing that could ever happen multiple times a day, multiple times a week, having to draw on that and mull over that. And she surmises that, maybe she learned to associate extreme emotions with being applauded and being praised for it because that was something that a lot of young actors her age couldn't do to the extent that she could. And I feel like she came across as very well educated and also very objective when looking back at her childhood, which must be really hard given all the emotions that are incorporated in all that. Those are her personal memories. But I feel like I learned a lot about the psyche in
Sure.
her looking back at her experience as a child actor.
Absolutely. That was such an interesting story to read. I'd say maybe got a chuckle out of, the drama that went into like whenever she would lose a tooth. That was like death for an audition
The
because
flipper.
yes. So she went to like her family dentist and got a flipper and was able to like go to her audition. But there was one audition when they were like on the road. They didn't have their family dentist. And so her mom, like literally, I think she like super glued her baby tooth back in for an audition because they were not in the right place and they did not have the amount of time to get a new flipper. And it just kind of shows how serious they were taking this and the
No.
extremes they were willing to go to.
But also
Um,
the joy that she was robbed of as a child. Losing a tooth was like the shit. Like,
yeah.
you would be so excited. I would always pray that I would lose my tooth at school because you would get this little colorful treasure chest to walk
Yeah.
around with your tooth so you could leave it for the tooth fairy that night and not lose your tooth. That like broke my heart that
I
she's like, "Mom,
know.
I have horrible news. My tooth is loose." Like,
I know. That and her voice changing sounded like was like a real thing. When she talked about being the voice of Dot in A Bug's Life, I totally forgot she was the voice of Dot. And she got exposure to like very serious voice acting at such a young age. And they had to try to get as much recording in before her voice started to change. And she said near the end of filming, her voice was changing. So she had to make this conscious effort to keep her voice where it was when they first started filming. So just all these things that I would never, ever think of that I just thought was really interesting.
I know all these things that a normal child would be like excited about. She seems to resent it in some way just because of how it'll affect her job. And as a child, we talk about this so much. Like, should kids be allowed to work? And every time I read about this, it's like, no. My answer is always a resounding, like, I don't think kids should be allowed to have jobs because it
No,
robs them
no.
of these quintessential moments that turn them into like happy, well-adjusted adults. Even though we have Hillary Duff.
She's the exception, though. She's not the norm, I think. But then we get into Remember the Titans, which is where I think many of us were really introduced to Hayden. And she recalls how she was like completely rejected for the part. They were not interested in her at all. And her agent basically had to beg for her to even get an audition. Apparently, the casting director said that she wasn't like tomboy enough for the position. But her mom was serious business. And, I was getting Kris Jenner vibes from her mom. And so
Yeah.
Hayden, like, bloodied her knuckles accidentally when she was swimming in the pool. Like, she, like, dove in and scraped her hands on the bottom of the pool. So she had bloody knuckles, and her mom dressed her in kind of, like, boyish clothes and, like, played up the bruised and bloody knuckles and sent her into this audition to prove how tomboy Hayden Panettiere could be. And what do you know? The bloody knuckles, the boys' clothes, it worked. They loved her. They wanted her for the part. And Hayden really credits Remember the Titans as the role that changed everything for her. And she also said that filming this movie was the happiest she's ever felt as an actor. And she said she really was in this sweet spot just with her age. Like, she impressed people if she did well. They're like, wow, you're so good for your age. And at the same time, she was forgiven when she messed up. It's like, oh, you're still so young, like it's okay. So it's like she was really in this sweet spot as an actor at that time. And of course, she was working with Denzel and just completely in awe of the cast that was around her.
I can't believe she was 10 years old.
Wow. Is that what it was? 10?
She
Oh
was
my
10
gosh.
years old. Like,
Crazy.
what was I doing when I was 10 years old?
I was putting
I know
on
what
a
I was doing.
play in the basement.
Exactly.
Probably.
And like, I was pretending to be married to a Backstreet
Of
Boy. Like,
course.
oh my God. The story she told about Denzel Washington were really freaking cute. Like their first
Yeah.
scene together, he was like behind a door and she opened the door and he would be making like funny faces. And that
Yep.
just totally set the scene for the rest of the shoot. And I love when people let kids be kids. So
Yes.
Denzel, we love you for that. Okay, the next big revelation, this one shocked the hell out of me. I didn't even know this was a thing. Do you remember the movie Panic Room
Of
that came
course.
out in
I love that
2002?
movie. I loved
Okay,
that
it
movie.
scared the shit out of me. I was
Yeah.
like, Mom, Dad, do we have a panic room? We need a panic room. And then we need a panic room for the panic room
Yeah.
in case somebody bad gets into the panic room. And they were like, who let you watch this movie? So this was actually a huge break for Hayden. David Fincher was directing. We know he's the king of suspense and thriller. He directed Seven and Fight Club and later Zodiac, like the greatest psychological thriller suspense movies, I would argue, of all time. 2 weeks into pre-production, Nicole Kidman, who's going to be her mom, and at this time was still like a rising star within Hollywood, she was attached to the movie. But apparently, Nicole hurt herself during filming Moulin Rouge and needed to pull out of Panic Room. Shortly after that, they get Jodie Foster, who we all know was the lead. I had no idea that Nicole Kidman was even attached
Me
to this movie. I
neither.
can't imagine her in that role.
It's okay, sweetie.
Like, that's Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
So Jodie Foster's announced as the leading lady. And then again, we're 2 weeks like before pre-production. Hayden gets a call that she also was being replaced because she didn't look enough like Jodie Foster. And the role was given to Kristen Stewart instead. One, I totally forgot Kristen Stewart. Like this
I
was
was like,
her big break.
I was like, that was Kristen Stewart?
That was
Like,
Kristen Stewart.
that's
That's how I learned
crazy.
what diabetes is. Not Nick Jonas. I
Oh.
had Kristen Stewart in the panic room.
Yep. Yes, we did.
And later on, Hayden learns that the reason why she was replaced is not because she didn't look enough like Jodie Foster. It's because her mother refused to let production cut Hayden's hair to look more like Jodie Foster. Like she could have had the role if her mother was just
Crazy.
more willing to let them experiment with her look. And this is like the one that got away for Hayden. I mean, this movie was huge. It made $197 million worldwide. Obviously, she went on to do amazing things with her career, but what a gut punch, like she had that in her palm. And I thought it's interesting that she doesn't editorialize how she felt about learning that her mom made that decision. She just tells us later on, I learned this, and like leaves us with it and moves on to another topic. She's not like, it made me feel betrayed. Like she's just kind of letting us be like, wow, that's so
I was like, wow, that's
shitty.
bullshit. Yeah.
Right. So I thought that was like an interesting choice that she
True.
made. And it does kind of stay true to her disclaimer at the beginning of the book that she doesn't, hold any ill will against her mom. Another big moment in this book is 9/11. Again, her dad was a New York City firefighter. So this was a life-changing event for Hayden and her family growing up in New York City. It was just devastating to hear this from the perspective of a child living in New York City. I think obviously we all remember where we were on that day growing up in Connecticut. It was like super close to home, but she was right there. And her dad had all of his friends on the fire squad, impacted by this. So she recalled being at school and there was an announcement asking kids whose parents worked in the World Trade Center to report to the office before abruptly just canceling school altogether. It's so emotional thinking about this. We were in 5th grade when 9/11 happened. And I remember we also got an announcement that all after school activities were canceled. It was like, woohoo, like we have the afternoon off. And then we all went home and we were like, holy fucking shit. So Hayden's dad was a firefighter and she knew 15 of the men who died on Ground Zero. And he went to Ground Zero the next day to dig for his friends in the rubble. She said that she mentioned 9/11 in her book, not because she had, a unique experience. So many kids went through the exact same thing she did, but because it was a defining moment for our generation. And this resonated so much with me. Even though she's older than us, I feel like
Yeah.
she encapsulated my feelings so well. She said this was the first time we were old enough to feel vulnerable and understand our country was heading into war. I got so emotional during this part,
Yeah.
but it was just insane. And I really appreciated her sharing her experience.
No, she did that very eloquently. And then kind of after talking about that is when she gets into landing the role of Claire in Heroes. And she got the role of the cheerleader after this was after she played a cheerleader in Bring It On. And I immediately pictured that iconic dance break scene from that movie where Hayden is
We have it
dancing and
on
it
our feed if you're curious.
somewhere. Yes. If you know, you know. It's really special. But that one, she landed the role right on the spot, like immediately after auditioning, which is apparently very uncommon. Usually they make you wait, maybe bring it back in. But she got it right then and there. And this is when her and her family decided to make the move to LA. And it was really from Heroes that she recalls is when she felt she kind of became, famous overnight. She started getting recognized in public, and she was only about 16 at the time.
What an insane experience. And I love that she shared who her first Hollywood boyfriend was, Stephen Coletti, Steve Ben. And I love that she was like, he taught me the ropes of how to deal with the paparazzi. Like he's like this seasoned mega
Yes.
celebrity, but he really was at the time. He was America's most wanted teenage boyfriend.
Are there paparazzi pics of them together? I'm
Oh,
looking
there
this up
sure are.
now.
That was the first, I was like tandem Googling while I
Oh
was
my God.
listening to the audiobook. There's so many photos of them.
I definitely did that when she was high because I couldn't picture what Vlad looked like. So I was looking him up. But
I went into
oh,
such a
wow.
wormhole with their height difference.
Oh, it's crazy. It is crazy. Okay, there are a ton of pictures of them. Wow. But also while this is going on, so she has her first Hollywood boyfriend. She's in this new mega hit show. And this is also when her parents decide to get a divorce. Her mom, found out that her dad was unfaithful, but it sounds like their relationship hadn't really been in a good place for a long time. But as this is going on, Hayden's mom shares like way too much information with her young daughter about like what her dad did and what she's feeling. It seemed like to me at least that she was leaning on Hayden as kind of an emotional crutch, probably more than she should have. And obviously Hayden felt extreme feelings of betrayal by her dad, and his actions in this divorce left long-term cracks and scars in the family.
Inappropriate to the max of her
Yes,
mom to share those things with her daughter. Like,
for
what the
sure.
hell?
Get a
Like,
friend.
write a diary. Like,
Right.
do literally anything but confide in your teenage daughter why you hate her dad.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, what the
yeah.
hell? Oh my God. I felt so bad for Hayden when she was recalling this. But again, she never says, like, I resent my mom for doing that. She made me look at my dad differently. Like, it's
Yep,
almost like she's being objective, like we're reading a textbook about her life. And I
yep.
wonder if she's doing that out of sensitivity for her mom, but it's also like she didn't have any sensitivity for you.
True that.
Compassionate queen. It did feel like she gave her mom a lot of empathy and like passes. And I
Mhm.
almost got the sense that she blamed herself too, because her mom was traveling all the time because of her Hayden's career. And that's what
Yeah.
allowed, the gap in the relationship, whatever. The mom is not high on my list of favorite people,
No,
I have
no.
to say. So she talks a lot about dealing with paparazzi and pop culture at the time. She's 17 years old. She's getting harassed. She says that she develops body dysmorphia. One photographer even kicked her just to get Hayden to like look her way. And just like
Yeah.
the abuse that these celebrities had to put up with on everyday basis is insane. But then the photographers return to her and say, this is your job. This is what you wanted. Like, you want to be a star? Like, this is what you got to put up with. And a lot of people have that mentality when it comes to celebrities today, too, which, sure, people want to take your photo when you go out in public, but you shouldn't be harassed or kicked or like your
Right.
personal safety or space invaded on a regular basis. I don't know. Like, what do you think about that argument? I feel like it's come up a lot lately, especially around like Chapel Roan. Like, she's asking for more boundaries when it comes to dealing with the public. And it's been very polarizing for a lot of people to wrap their heads around.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I don't know if I think Chapel Roan's gone about it like the right way. I also think we live in a different time. I just don't think paparazzi's as intense as it used to be. It's
It's
a
like maybe
mix.
paparazzi isn't as intense, but like, I just think of that Justin Bieber walking around Boston Common and people are taking pictures of him and videoing him like he's a zoo animal.
Yeah.
And now it's like everyday people walking, like just recording
Yeah,
it. They don't even say
yeah.
hi. They're just like standing there with their phones. It's got to
It's
be weird.
It's weird, I'm sure, but I do think it's, like, something that comes with the gig. But, like, you shouldn't be assaulting people or, like,
Right.
Getting up skirts or like, I think there's a line that, it's very inappropriate and too far, but I do think that some of that is, at this point, has to be expected, whether right or wrong.
People just need more decorum.
Yes. Get it together.
Where is the etiquette? There is none. So oh my gosh, we have to talk about her publicist. We talked about this. Who were we just talking about this with? Misha Barton.
Yeah.
Had a very similar story. We just did a Misha Barton deep dive on our Patreon, and something similar happened to her. But Hayden recalls that her publicist gave her happy pills, quote unquote, to deal with the very long and often monotonous press days. She's going from junket to junket. They're asking her the same stupid questions over and over. And she is getting a little sluggish. It's 5 p.m. She has to film. Her publicist is like, hey, here you go. She has no idea what they are until she finally is like, hey, where do you get those? And her publicist was like, oh, my boyfriend gets them in Mexico or whatever.
Yeah.
So who knows what it was, but if it was like
Adderall.
Adderall. Yeah, probably Adderall. I mean, it wasn't long until Hayden was like asking for these happy pills for herself because they kept her going. They kept her like a chatty Cathy when her personality and being an outgoing, charismatic leading lady is the name of the game. So she gets into these happy pills and she's popping off in pop culture. The paparazzi are after her. So obviously our girl dips her toe in the party scene of the early 2000s, our favorite topic of literally all time to ever talk about. I was screaming when Les Deux was mentioned, aka LC and the Hills' favorite club. They called it Les Deux, which is just the wrong way of pronouncing it. It's Les Deux, but whatever. Anyways, she befriends Paris Hilton. She says that Paris was like a big sister to her, which if you are a young teen dealing with paparazzi and that amount of exposure for the first time, Paris Hilton would be such an amazing person to learn the ropes from because she played the game. She leaned in. She still does. She was just on Deux Mois for angling her phone screen ever so to show her billion-dollar points status on like Hilton rewards. I mean, nothing she does is by accident. So if you're going to learn from someone, let it be Paris Hilton. She also said that she admired Lindsay Lohan for her ability to talk to anybody. She said that Lindsay was a cool girl that was born for this life. And Hayden felt like it was just much more difficult for her to be this social butterfly going out to these nightclubs. I never associated Hayden with the party girls of this era. I've obviously seen the photos of them out and stuff, but if you're like, who's on your Mount Rushmore of 2000s party girls, Hayden's like not on there. And she said she really didn't get into too much trouble when she was younger because she just desperately needed the approval of her parents and industry bosses. She did not have a rebellious bone in that little body. And she makes sort of a self-deprecating joke here that ruining her reputation would come much later in her life. But when she was in her teens, she was really focused on her job and wanting to please the adults around her.
Yeah, and something that also really kept her on the straight and narrow was she was signed as like one of the faces of Neutrogena at this time. And I can still picture some of her ads. She just looks so clear and her teeth are blinding. And I just can picture them.
Water.
Yes. Did you say the water?
Yeah.
Yes, the water. Exactly.
I'm making like a splashing,
yes,
throwing water on your face. And she's like smiling so perfectly.
And her teeth are blinding.
How does her shirt not get soaking wet?
Couldn't be me. Could not be me. So, but because of that, she was very cognizant that Neutrogena has this very squeaky clean image. And she didn't want to do anything out and about, as like you said in the party scene, to mess up that opportunity. And she said it dictated a lot of her day to day, how she dressed, how she acted. She always had that kind of in the corner of her mind.
Yeah. So here was an interesting tidbit from her social circle and like her going out days. Room 23 happens in 2008. So there was a lot of lore around this book. It was like a photo coffee table book, and it featured a lot of famous faces in it. And there was a lot of rumors around it being like nefarious. I'll let you Google it, but Diana Jenkins was behind getting all the celebrities together in the production for Room 23. Diana Jenkins was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, so that's how I know her. And she was apparently in the naughty oddies, a fixture in the Hollywood social circuit. So here's how Hayden comes to be in Room 23, the most notorious coffee table book of the 2000s. So Hayden's makeup artist was doing makeup for this shoot for Room 23. And Hayden needed her makeup done for a party last minute. And her makeup artist was like, listen, I'm at this shoot. Why don't you just come here? I'll do your makeup and then we can just like snap some photos of you for this book. And I can tell how naive Hayden was to be photographed, one, for a project she knew nothing about. Like, usually you'd have a lawyer be like, what the fuck is this? I mean, if you are my client, I'm doing a full pull on everything associated with these people.
Yeah.
I'm finding their middle school boyfriends. Like, you're not doing anything until it's like 100% brand safe. So I just thought it was so interesting that Hayden's like, oh, sure. Like, yeah, it was just photos for your book. And Hayden said that she just, quote, fell completely under her spell, end quote, when talking about Diana Jenkins.
Yeah, it sounds like they kind of formed a mother-daughter friendship relationship after this chance meeting. I'm pretty sure Troy from Beyond the Blinds has done an episode about Room 23, maybe on Dunzo if you want to dig deeper into this. But let me tell you, a couple years ago, I was at the Peninsula in Beverly Hills, and they had this book in a case out on display, and they were selling it for like $1,000. It was something like it was on sale for like at least $1,000. And I was like, do I need to like pretend I'm interested in buying this book so I can get them to take it out of the case so I can look through it and get the tea? But I didn't. They're like not online. It's really hard to get copies. As Kelsey said, there's some interesting allegations about what this book was meant to serve as. So do your own research, then circle back to us and let us know your thoughts. But she also talked about a friend that she called Stella in the book. And she had had a lot of fun times with this Stella. Obviously, that's not her real name. She's not being identified in this book. And Hayden trusted her. And Stella invited her to a party at her place. And Hayden showed up and it was like all these elite, like Hollywood actors and big shots and like Hayden. And it was just like very weird vibes. She was the only girl. And it was like, besides Stella, and it was like all eyes on her, weird small talk. And like one of them tried to make a gross joke and literally whipped out his testicles, like the gum on my pants joke. I feel like I've seen that in a movie before. And this was the first time she said she felt like she experienced that like a line was being crossed. And, she was still only 19 at this time. So she got out of there. I think she kind of moved on with her friend Stella, didn't have any suspicions that anything nefarious was necessarily going on, just that this was a weird one-off. And so then she ended, I know. So then Stella was like, let's go to the south of France. I have a yacht lined up. Like, let's do it. So they're on the yacht. They're having this great time. And then like one of these days, Stella brings her to a private room to meet, as Hayden describes, a famous British singer who's allegedly lounging naked in the bed waiting for Hayden. And Stella basically told her to she was like, get in bed with him and like do it. And Hayden said she like did what she was told, not even processing like how to say no in that moment and just feeling all this betrayal because she thought Stella was a close friend. Ultimately, she was able to like get out of there, but she never interacted with Stella again after that. And fans have speculated online about who this, famous British singer could be, but Hayden has declined to publicly name him. And I haven't found anywhere that's been able to kind of come up with a speculation.
No. So she's been asked why she continues to keep the musician's identity a secret. And she said that she's afraid she's going to get sued. Same with the Stella character. And Diana Jenkins's team has come out and they've been like, if any of you accuse Diana of being Stella, you're going to get sued. They're not playing with this. So here's what Hayden told the Hollywood Reporter. She said, quote, "It was a bad look for them, and the people I didn't name were generally people within my industry. They're people I could run into again. I didn't want to put myself in that position. Things happened a long time ago, but it was to protect me and my company from being sued by some very pissed off famous people," end quote.
Yeah. So, but this story to me, like, we hear of like the term yachting a little
Mhm.
bit, and this kind of rings true of that to me. I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. We also get into her love life a bit, and we'll have stories kind of interspersed throughout the episode. But one of the first things that stood out to me was that she shared that she was bisexual. And I think this was the first time she's ever publicly shared that. And she talks about in her early days when she was really young, how while all of her friends were like obsessing over boys, girls were much more her speed. She said, I've never been in love with a woman, but she's open to that happening one day, And so I thought it was really cool that she was willing to share that. And I definitely think that was one of the headlines from this story that
Mhm.
people didn't know.
Love that for her. Happy Pride.
Yes.
She talks about her relationship with Milo Vitabigliala. I can't pronounce
Yeah.
his last name. And he was 30 and she was 18 when they started dating. Lots and lots of scrutiny over their age gap. She's like, "We started as friends, blah, blah, blah. He was dating someone, then he wasn't." And I just have to say, I agree with the scrutiny. It's totally inappropriate, but she does a really good job trying to be like, it wasn't weird. Like, I was mature, but like, it's not okay for a 30-year-old to date a teenager.
I know. I just found it interesting that her tenor was like fairly, I don't want to say defensive of Milo, but
I would think that's a
yeah.
fair, totally. She did not want anyone coming for him as a result of this book.
But I will say it seemed like she really just relied on him as like a stable figure and the stability that he brought to her life during that time when there was a lot of, chaos with her parents and heroes and all that jazz. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I
Whatever.
don't think it's gross. But yeah,
Yes.
she only had amazing things to say about Milo, which, we love to hear. We're glad it wasn't a traumatizing experience. Now let's talk about Vlad, our WWE
World.
gigantic heavyweight
Yeah.
champion, whatever he was.
Yeah.
He fights people for a living, and she meets him on a post-breakup trip to New York City with Diana Jenkins. He was photographed in room 23. So that was the first time they met at some like party with all the room 23ers.
Yeah, she described Vlad as someone who radiated warmth. It seems like when they met at that party, sparks flew between them immediately. I think their height difference was something that they kind of bonded over and laughed over. And they just seemed to start spending a lot of time together. And he was like, "I'm not going to fall in love again." He was just like not looking for love, not looking for anything. And Hayden literally was like, "Okay, challenge accepted." And all of a sudden, they were in a long distance relationship for the majority of their relationship. Like, he was back training in Germany. She was, in LA or Nashville. And they were literally a Skype romance. And during these years, they were definitely on and off a bit, which is, hard to not be given half the time they were like on opposite sides of the world. But it seemed like
Yeah.
she always felt this pull back to Vlad.
I thought it was
But
so cute how she'd be like, we'd fall asleep talking. Like he
yes.
would surprise her. They'd be like video chatting. And then all of a sudden she'd be like, "Oh, someone's at the door." And it would be him. Like that is
Yeah.
so cute.
I liked a lot about what I heard about Vlad, but like she did highlight some like negatives in the relationship. She was like, he was always on his phone working. Like he never seemed truly present when we were together. And that's something that like bothered her a lot continuously throughout their relationship, like just feeling like he was kind of a prisoner to his phone. And she also mentioned that he never really asked about her career much, which she thought was kind of interesting. Like, meanwhile, she was like, "Tell me about these deals you're doing on your phone. Like, who are you talking to? Like, what does it mean?" Like, he owned businesses and stuff besides like being a heavyweight fighter. And he just like wouldn't divulge what he was doing. So that was something that also aided her a little bit. But regardless of these differences, he seemed similarly to Milo. Like, it looks like Hayden was looking for someone that brought her the feelings of stability and security and something that was probably lacking in her family life that she was able to get from some of these men. And so I understand, why she fell so hard and fast for him. And eventually he kind of proposed via Skype, like right on brand for their relationship. AO technology, but he was just like, "Will you marry me?" And she's like, "Are you asking like if I would marry you, or like, are you asking me to marry you? And he was basically asking her to marry him. And so they started planning for their wedding. And all of a sudden, seemingly, at least from Hayden's perspective, like out of the blue, he told her he wanted to postpone the wedding. But then like later that day, he like walked it back. He's like, you know what, let's get married. He like changed his mind. But like the bell had already been rung for Hayden. Like it was so devastating when he told her he wanted to postpone. And like he never really gave her a reason why. It just seemed like that was something that was very hurtful and traumatic to her. So when he was like, you know what, never mind, screw it, like, let's get married, she was like, no. And like walked, it was like he was dropping her off at the airport and she walked away and got on her plane. And like it remained like pretty unsettled, the status of their future nuptials.
Ooh,
So I
that
know.
gives me
No,
the
thank you.
heebie-jeebies.
No, thank you. So in the midst of all of this, Hayden has landed one of her biggest shows, Nashville, in 2011. She kind of leads off the bat talking about how much respect she has for Connie Britton, who played Raina James, and how like it was never her intention for her character to steal the thunder of Connie's character, like that Hayden's character, Juliet Barnes, would like outshine Raina James. But this is tea because there was a lot of speculation back in the day that Connie and Hayden had big beef behind the scenes.
Mm.
But according to Hayden's interpretation in the book, like this was just like because their character tension was so strong in the show, you know, the audience kind of created that fiction of there being drama in real life. But, you know, who knows what the truth actually was. We talked a lot about Hayden's previous projects and how like she felt so at home on set. But for her, Nashville was really a lonely set life. She didn't have a ton of friendships amongst the cast and crew, and she was just felt kind of isolated. And we also get that bombshell reveal that Hayden realized as the seasons and the episodes progressed that the writers of Nashville were like basing a lot of the plot lines on what she was going through in her own life, which is kind of crazy to wrap your mind around. And in reflecting, she was like, it was crazy because I was going through this trauma, eventually in my life, and I'd have to relive it a second time, acting it out. And usually acting's like somewhere where I get to separate myself from like the trauma and the bad stuff happening. But at some point I was living it two times, and it seemed to make that very difficult for her.
Yeah, it's so shitty.
Yeah.
Speaking of shitty, she did not shy away from talking about some really tough topics and memories in her life. And one of those was when her dad was accused of assaulting her mom one night. And Hayden takes the opportunity in this memoir to exonerate her dad from these accusations by her mother. And I was kind of surprised when she went into so much detail. It felt like she was talking about this for a really long time in the book. And I was
Yeah.
like, why would she highlight her dad hitting her mom? I was like, this is something that you might want to like glass over. And but then when it came out that, after a fight that Hayden's mom and dad had, her mom wrongfully accused her dad of hitting her multiple times, which resulted in her dad's immediate arrest and an insane media frenzy around
Mhm.
it. And this was when she was still dating Milo, I believe. It was like the
Yeah.
top when she had like just really popped off. So it became this huge paparazzi thing. If I remember correctly, she referenced there being helicopters over her condo where it happened. And it was like, oh, okay, the reason why she's spending so much time on this is because she wants to make it very clear and let the record show that her dad never put a hand on her mom. And her mom immediately regretted this false accusation, allegedly, after making that call. And her dad went to jail. I mean, damn, she's sitting in the chair at work and she gets a phone call like, hey, your dad's in jail. You need to get some bail money together over her mom just having a dramatic moment. Also, within the family life umbrella, we learn about this building resentment with her mom. Obviously, she's planted those seeds earlier, like how she lost out on big roles because her mom didn't want her to change the way she looks, like with Panic Room. Her mom is confiding in her way too much about her marriage with her father. Hayden recalls how hard it was to always be in business with her mom, and she eventually fires her mom as her manager. And her mom reacts, and like this made my blood run cold. Her
Yep.
mom apparently looked at her and just said, "You owe me."
Oof.
Ah,
Oof.
And
I know.
Hayden said that something inside her died that day. And her mom had driven her for so long. She credits her mom with her professionalism and the trajectory of her career. Like, it's clear that this was a really hard decision for her to make, and she doesn't take any of those things for granted, but it just wasn't serving her anymore. And for her mom
Yeah.
to have that reaction is like stage mom nightmares. So at 19 years old, Hayden finally buys her own house so she could move out of the 2-bed, 2-bath condo that she shared with her parents and her younger brother in LA. That was the home they all shared when she moved to LA to be in Heroes. And I just thought that was crazy that she's like on top of the world and she's still like sharing a room with her brother.
Yeah, and her mom and dad, and even after she moved out of her house, she was still letting her mom live in that condo and, like, giving her money, and at a certain point, I feel like Hayden realized she was maybe enabling her parents' divorce dragged out for a long time, and I think Hayden was like, "Maybe I'm enabling this behavior a little bit." She also talks a lot about her brother, Jansen. He was in his later teens at this point, and it seems like she really started to worry about him a bit. He talked about, wanting to be famous like she was. It's not because he, loved acting or was trying to improve his acting craft, but he like wanted to be famous and he wanted to get gigs through his sister. He wanted to be a Nepo baby, basically. And she was just not willing. She's like, I want you to want to get roles on your own merit. Like she was not willing to try to use her influence to just like kind of sneak him into certain, and she was like, he was great. He was getting roles on his own merit. And he just seemed like he wanted more from me. And I didn't want him going after this for the wrong reasons, and she thought
That
that that's kind of what he was doing.
That part killed me because, like, she's an older sister. She wants to give her little brother everything, but she's also grappling with the horrible downsides of fame and probably
Yeah,
wanted to protect him to a certain degree. And it's like there's no one in her family that doesn't want something from her now at
sure.
this point. Her mom wants her to live out the dreams she never got to realize on her own. Now her brother wants her for a leg up in the industry. That made me really
Yeah.
sad for her.
It was really sad. And, this last third of the book, we're going to talk about Kaya, her daughter, her postpartum depression, her addiction, and then obviously what ultimately happened to Jansen. So Vlad and her are engaged and they realize that they're pregnant. And they were so excited. They legitimately bought this like souped up house in LA with like insane security measures. They had bulletproof windows, like metal grates. They had palm print access. Like it was to the next level, Justin Bieber level of security. But like to be fair, what's going on in Vlad's world, his brother had just become the mayor of Kiev. And so there were legitimate threats and security concerns that they had to be prepared for. And I can only imagine how stressful that would have been while pregnant. And they were also still doing this like long distance relationship. And it's not like long distance Boston to New York, it's long distance, Nashville to Germany. And so Vlad, promised to be around every few weeks to help out with his daughter, but he was still training in Germany and had his businesses. And it was just not an ideal situation, it seems like. So she was in her third trimester and she was going to have a baby shower in Miami. And literally the day before she flew down for her shower, she had a doctor's appointment where they flagged some concerns about the physical development of Kaya. They were worried she would have a condition called microcephaly, in which her head was not growing as fast as the rest of her body was growing. And so imagine getting that news right before your baby shower. You're in your third trimester, so much stress right up before her delivery. But eventually she did get confirmation from a specialist that Kaya was okay. And so that was a huge moment of relief. And so she went into labor. She had nearly a 14-hour labor, and they had to give her a C-section after all that laboring. And she had to have emergency surgery right after birth. Like she nearly bled out on the table. She needed 7 blood transfusions. She would just not clot. And so she had a really scary and traumatic birth. And after she kind of came around, she very honestly and vulnerably talked about not really feeling anything immediately for her daughter after birth. She's like, you hear the stories, it's like, oh my gosh, you get your baby. And it's like, you hear those cliche stories. And she's like, I just didn't feel that. And she's like, I felt like it was maybe someone else, like it was someone else's baby. And she said she continued to have these feelings of nothingness after birth as well. This wasn't just a one-time thing. And obviously, we know that these are signs of postpartum depression and totally normal to have if you're suffering from postpartum depression. And so it's just awful that it seems like she had such an extreme kind of version of it. And it didn't help that her fiance was not really around much, I will say. She said that Vlad took traditional parenting roles a bit too seriously. Like he wasn't one that was gonna give the baby the bath or change the diaper. And
Hate
she's like, we
that.
didn't. Yeah. And she said, up until this point, she had never really had these resentments towards Vlad, but all of a sudden it was like really like piling on. And
Yeah.
yeah,
You almost
understandably.
die giving birth to your child that your husband won't change the diaper of once.
Yeah. And he's like
Not
there for a week and then leaves and then comes back 3 and still won't like, if you're coming for a week, you better be like taking everything off my plate for that
Yeah, I'm
entire
not
week.
doing one
Yeah,
thing. I'm taking a
exactly.
bath, I'm reading a book, I'm drinking
Exactly.
wine. Like, what the hell?
So obviously she's in a lot of pain. And so to self medicate and like mask these feelings that she's struggling with, Hayden turned to wine and eventually that evolved to more alcohol. And she said, drinking completely eliminated the constant anxiety she was feeling. And she was like, I literally needed a drink at 6 a.m. to function. And this was when she
Ugh.
was, she was a new mom and she was also filming Nashville. And so it got
And
really
she's like a
bad.
single mom
Right. She's like a
for all
single
intents and
mom.
purposes. Like, she's
Yes.
single momming.
So between season 3 and 4 of Nashville is when she went into treatment for the first time. And this is when she was officially diagnosed with postpartum depression. But this didn't go the way we would have hoped because when she left rehab, she was prescribed like, anti-anxiety medications, but those made her very sleepy and she became very dependent on them to sleep. But she was like groggy all day after taking them. And then so one day she got to set and literally slept through an entire day of shooting. And someone came to find her, get her, and they couldn't wake her up. And so she ended
Oof.
up in the hospital. And that was too much for her. So she ditched the meds and she went back to alcohol to continue to combat her anxiety. She was in a really vicious cycle, it sounded like here. And to her point earlier, this cycle that she was going through was reflected. This was literally a plot line on Nashville. This was what her character, Juliette Barnes, was going through at a certain time in the show. So, really sick that they were doing that. And so, once again, she decided she needed to check herself back into rehab. And after that, Neutrogena canceled her contract, which I was super disappointed to see. I know Neutrogena, prides themselves on this squeaky clean image, but I mean, she was literally struggling with postpartum depression. I mean, I guess if you're going to read a headline, it'll be like, Hayden Panettiere checks into rehab, but like they should have like done their due diligence a bit more. How incredible would it have been if they had like supported her, publicly
Right.
supported her, put
Also,
out a
she's getting
statement.
help.
Yeah, and
Like,
she's getting help. I don't
going into rehab, that should be an incredible thing that people celebrate and
know.
encourage. Like, not going to
She's
rehab is when you should be worried, you know? That's
if
insane.
I was really disappointed to read that. I'm sure that was hard for her because I remember hearing how much that contract meant to her, but she was still having troubles with Vlad. Like, he's like, I can't understand why you're not happy. It's like that person who like doesn't understand depression. It's like, your life's perfect. Like, why aren't
Ugh.
you happy? And, you have
Be
a nice life.
grateful. Keep a
Yeah.
gratitude journal.
Right.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
just not how it works. You can have everything and still have to battle something like depression. It's just so obtuse. So they break up again. The stress of what she was going through and co parenting across the world was just like too much. But they always seem to kind of make amends, at least be cordial, even when they were not like together. And so when Kaya was 3, Hayden went to visit Vlad and Kaya in Europe. Kaya would spend like 90-day increments with Vlad. She had that timer because she was a US citizen, so she couldn't stay more than 90 days. But that girl has probably racked up some serious international miles by this point in her life. And that's when Vlad dropped the bomb that he wanted full custody of Kaya. He just thought it would be better for her, more stability for her. He said that her friends told him that she wasn't doing a good job being a mother, basically. And she's like, what friends? And she never really got an answer, but she made the decision not to fight him on this. I didn't really feel like she divulged like her thinking in that. but she must have just ultimately come to the decision that that was what was best for her daughter.
And in the very beginning, in that disclaimer, she said, quote, "I grieve that I'm not the mother I thought I'd be and definitely not the mother I want to be. Trust me,
Yeah.
no one should ever have to raise a child on FaceTime. And although I miss Kaya so much, my heart aches. I know how blessed I am to be her mom. She's the greatest gift of my life with all the best parts of her father and me. And today I believe I have the opportunity to be a different kind of parent than most."
Wow.
So, I mean, you can tell it impacts her. How could it not?
How could it not? I
But
know,
I
but
mean, she clearly knew she was not gonna win this battle.
that must have taken a lot of strength. So I give her, credit for doing what's best.
Yeah, for the
Eh,
kid and not what's best for
yeah,
you, for your
yeah.
ego or because you miss your kid. Like, I give her a lot of credit.
So then next, she's kind of mourning. She's very raw after this. She's given up Kaya and she's kind of lost. And through her brother Jansen is when she met Brian. And I just know Brian. I don't even know Brian's last name. I just know him as the guy that she's like most recently linked to in headlines for the most volatile relationship with. In the beginning, she described him as a kindred spirit. Their relationship moved very fast. Within weeks, she had basically moved him in, and she described Brian as like a new drug for her in the lowest part of her life. And she then, recalls when Brian first assaulted her. It always happened when they both were drinking. The first time it was a slap across the face. And then, another night she said he, quote, busted her face so badly she couldn't leave the house, end quote. Another night he like relentlessly just beat her. And she said she just would not call 911 because her big fear was that the public would find out. And it's just so devastating that, she felt like she couldn't seek help because of facing public scrutiny and public opinion. That was awful to read. And eventually, after one particularly bad beating, the neighbors heard it and called the police. And
The
he
neighbors
got,
heard it.
yeah, he gets arrested. Hayden gets a restraining order against him, but they get back together. And unsurprisingly, this happened again. And it was after this time when he was arrested and like put in jail that this time Hayden finally realized she was like, that's not the Brian I know. Like, we're perfect 99% of the time. There's just this 1%. She kept excusing him and his behavior. And it was finally the last time where she was like, I know this can no longer be. And after all of this, going through this with Brian, she checked herself into treatment again for 8 months.
You know what's
She
even
came,
messed up, even like today, why this
what?
Brian man is diabolical? He did an interview with TMZ like
Ugh,
recently around this book.
ugh.
Apparently, TMZ asked Brian if he thinks marriage is still on the table with Hayden. And he said, I hope so. She
Oh,
probably
God.
doesn't think the same way. What
I
the
hope she doesn't. Oh, I
fuck?
hope not. I
What
know that's
the hell?
crazy.
But
That's
they were
crazy.
photographed at an airport in March.
Oh, that's bad news bears. I
This
don't
is
love to
according
hear
to
that.
Yahoo Entertainment. This story is from May 13th, 2026 by TMZ. I hope
I
TMZ
don't
is wrong.
I don't like that. I
No.
don't like that. So, after going through all this abuse, she again checked herself into treatment for 8 months, and she came out feeling renewed, ready to let go of a lot of the pain and hurt and resentment she had been holding on to. And then, to wrap up the book, she talks about kind of what leads up to Jansen's death. In the beginning of the book, she spends a lot of time talking about how much she loved Jansen and how much she really cared for him. And it really was hard for her to watch him start using drugs. He was using heroin, she found
Ugh.
out. And she was trying to get him to get help and trying to get her dad involved to get him to do drug testing and, maybe convince him that he could go to rehab. And not everybody was willing to pursue that with her. And it just seemed like she was kind of watching this happen in slow motion. And her dad called her with the news that Jansen had died from an overdose. And she was the one who then had to call her mom and break the news to her mom about Jansen's death. And that was kind of like the last story of the book.
Devastating.
I remember seeing her do an interview kind of like recently after his death, and it was clear it was too soon. She
Oh my
was
God,
like,
she's just crying the entire
yeah,
time.
too raw. And I thought the way she articulated it in the book, you can tell she's been healing. And it was just a really interesting read. What would you rate it, Kelsey? What are your thoughts? Wow, instead of pink sparkly microphones, let's do orcas because she loved Save the Whales, right?
Yes.
Like
Was it
4
orca
orcas
whales?
or 4 whales.
Yeah, the whale guy. Oh my God, we didn't even
Yes.
talk about that. Orca whales are my favorite animal also. So when she said she loved sea life, I was like, Hayden,
Yes.
my girl. And how her advocacy for sea life, it was these special whales that are in Japan though. And like the dolphin fishing that would happen where they would like cut off their fins and stuff. And it was just like horrific. And
We could rate dolphins.
okay, dolphins, Lisa Frank style dolphins.
Yes, 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 yes.
Out of
Perfect.
5,
Yeah.
I think I'd give this book maybe a 3, only because I'm listening to Lena Dunham's memoir at the same time. And it's just like not really fair to compare their writing because
Yeah.
Lena is just a prolific writer. But
Yeah.
I give Hayden so much credit for being so honest about her own experiences. It really didn't feel like she glazed over
Mhm.
anything. And it was an interesting look at her self being a people pleaser and just like kind of doing what she was told and realizing the people around her don't always have her best interests in
Yeah.
mind.
I would give it 4 dolphins, 4 Lisa Frank dolphins. I'm guilty. I feel like I read the tabloids and the headlines back in the day and when she was going through all of this and was just like, oh, wow, like Hayden's spiraling. And it's just a reminder that you never really know what someone's going through and you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. And I just was really impressed by her strength and how far she's come. And, she clearly loves acting so much. And I really hope we can see her doing something again soon.
I know. We wish the best for Hayden. We've done a deep dive episode on her career in the past. We love her. I mean, she is totally one of the actresses that I think shaped our young lives. I looked up to her. I was a little upset she didn't mention Tiger Cruise.
Big miss.
Huge mistake. I would have loved to have heard about that production and being like a Disney Channel darling. But man, she's lived a tough life. She's come out on the other side, hopefully for the better. And I just think it takes a lot of guts to tell a story when it's not very flattering to herself.
Yeah.
Go Hayden. We're rooting for you. And we're also rooting for you, our listeners. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't yet, please leave us a review, hopefully a positive one. Give us 5 Lisa Frank inspired dolphins on Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your pods. And make sure you're following us at When They Popped Pod on TikTok and Instagram. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.